Hello, and thanks for joining us for another episode of Paranormal United States. This is episode 15, and we're talking about Iowa.
Yes, we are. And this is a pretty dark one.
Cool.
And it's going to actually start off a bit more like a true crime podcast rather than a paranormal. But I think the background is quite important to sort of the paranormal side of it.
Got me hooked already.
But for Iowa, I'm going to talk about something I hadn't heard of, but it is quite well known in Iowa and in America. And there's a lot, when I did my research, there's a lot of articles, a lot of websites, a lot of podcasts about this place,
Okay.
this incident. But I had never heard of it before. So that is the Vasilla Axe murders.
No,
Have you heard of that? No.
no, I haven't. And but you got me at axe murder. So yeah, I'm good for that.
It's a bit of a horrible axe murder, this one. But yeah, so this is Vasilla. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's a small town in Iowa. Population is like 1,000, just over 1,000. So it is a small town.
Mm-hmm.
So the incident, these axe murders, took place in 1912. Priscilla was home to the Moore family. His husband and wife, Josiah and Sarah, and they had 4 kids: Herman, Mary, Arthur, and Paul. And they were all under the age of 12. And one night that year, in June 1912, 10-year-old Mary had invited 2 of her friends over to stay the night. They were sisters, Ina and Lena Stillinger, and they were aged 8 and 12. The family and the Stillinger sisters spent the evening at the church before they returned to the Moore household at around 10 p.m. that night. The following morning, one of the neighbours, Mary Peckham, noticed that the family hadn't woken up or come from the house to do the morning chores. So that the Moore family had chickens and like a little bit of like barns and stuff that they had. And they hadn't obviously used to come out early to sort out the chickens and stuff, but they hadn't come out that morning.
Okay.
So Mary Peckham sort of let the chickens out, sort of started off for him, then got hold of Josiah's brother Ross, as she became a bit concerned because she's knocking on the door, no one was answering. So she's a little bit worried because there's so many in the house as well, usually, that like someone would be in. So Ross arrived, he's the husband's brother, knocks on the door, no one answers. So he's got his spare key. So he lets himself in. Mary waits outside. And by the parlour, downstairs, there's a guest room where the 2 girls were staying, the sisters. And he opens the door and just is greeted by the sight of the 2 dead bodies. Just on the bed, these 2 girls, just dead on the bed. So Ross tells Mary to get the local peace officer, as it's called, the local law enforcement, who he soon arrived at the house and began searching the rest of the property. And he found that the entire Moore family, as well as the 2 sisters, the Stillinger sisters, had all been bludgeoned to death.
Cool.
In the guest room downstairs where the 2 girls were, an axe was found, which was found to be the murder weapon. So obviously the investigation goes on, and they believe that they were all asleep and they're murdered because they were all in bed, axe wounds to the head, covered in blood. So all of them believed to have been asleep, apart from the older Stillinger sister, who had defensive wounds on her body, showing evidence that she had possibly tried to fight back. And because the axe was in that room, it's like he went there last. And in the attic, they found cigarette ends in the attic, which is this building. You can watch in the video. So the attic is a little crawl space in the attic. Yeah. And this is where they found cigarette ends, suggesting that the killer or killers were hiding up there, waiting for them to go to sleep, and then obviously going around and murdering each of them.
Yeah, that's dark.
So it's very dark. So, like I say, this was 1912, and it obviously made all the papers and it was big news at the time. There was obviously big investigations into it. Mm-hmm. A number of people were, basically all the homeless people were all suspects. They were all questioned. A couple of people were tried. One guy was tried twice. But, one was a hung jury, and then the other got acquitted at the second trial. And nobody's ever been found guilty.
Oh, wow.
So it still remains a cold case and unsolved murder.
That is proper dark. It's funny you should say, because I'm now you talk about it, I'm sure I've I'm sure I have heard of it. You know,
It,
that's quite a dark tale, regardless of.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of like, they do a lot of paranormal tours. Like you can get a bus that goes on Iowa and it goes to this house. I'll talk a little bit about the property, how it is now
Yeah,
as well in a bit. But yeah, like I say, it remains unsolved over 100 years later.
mad.
They never found who it was. There's a lot more detail I could go into about the actual deaths and the attacks and the older sister, but we're not a true crime podcast. It's a sort of
Yeah,
bit of background into why this house sort of started getting its reputation. So yeah, a very sad story, but where does paranormal come into it?
yes.
Well, the house has been under quite a few different ownerships since 1912, and families just don't seem to stay there for very long. And it seems to have changed hands quite a few times. Maybe because they find out that it was this house, or could
Yeah,
be.
it's got to be one of those places that when you find out that the whole family's been murdered via axe, probably loses its appeal quite quickly.
Yeah,
I'm surprised people buy it. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, it's quite it's pretty dark. So this is the house how it looked back in 1912. Quite a standard house.
Yeah.
Looks a bit creepy. Don't know if that's just because it's black and white, but it's there. But when they found it as well, it's a bit weird. Like all the curtains were drawn because it's the morning. There was like sheets over the mirrors and stuff like that. So it's like quite a creepy sort of atmosphere as well.
Right, well, that is odd.
So, but today,
Hmm.
the house serves as a paranormal hotel. Why not?
Why not?
Why not?
Embrace
They
it.
do day tours. Like I say, they do like bus tours that come around Iowa, stop there, and you can go in, tour the house. You can stay overnight on investigations for like $400.
Okay.
Just stay the night on your own. Just give you the keys. That's it. You're just free to
Yeah, I'll
do
do
whatever
it.
you want to do. So, why is it paranormal then?
Go
So,
on, tell me.
the spirits of the young victims are believed to still reside there. People that come to the house leave toys and gifts for them to play with, toy cars that have been seen to move on their own. The reports of what's been happening there range from disembodied giggles that can be heard, terrifying screams, unexplained movements of objects like toys that are left for the kids. There's a strange fog that's been seen moving from room to room, quite
Okay.
strangely.
Yeah.
And there's even indication that visitors to the property start exhibiting strange behaviour as if possessed.
Oh, wow.
And probably the most famous one of this, which again brought the house into national attention in 2014, because a paranormal investigator who was staying there, he was on his own. So he had friends with him, but he was sort of in this part of the house on his own. All of a sudden, he starts screaming for the people he was with, and he found him with what appeared to be a self-inflicted stab wound to his chest.
Oh, jeez.
So obviously, police attended. He's okay. He wasn't like life-threatening or anything, but he took to hospital. Police attended, and he had self-inflicted a stab wound to himself. So was it the house? Was it something? No one knows.
That's a bit insane, isn't it?
That's pretty mad. That was a 37-year-old Robert Lawson Jr. who stabbed himself in the chest for some reason.
Did he? I take it they didn't find out why he did it. He just did it.
No, not that to find like sort of use of him or anything. It's just this happened to this person in the house. There's a tour guide, Johnny Hauser. He stayed at the property over 400 times over the past 15 years.
Wow.
And he's heard footsteps many times when he's been alone in the house. And the reason why he sort of wanted to start staying overnight, because he used to be there in the day doing tours for like people on the bus trips and stuff. But he was there on his own and he hears someone walk upstairs, like he hear the dresser door shut. So thinking it was someone trespassing, he ran upstairs to confront them. And obviously there's been no one there. So that's what made him think, all right, I'm going to start staying overnight and see if I can find anything else happening. Because
why not?
Because he was like, he used to clean the house and stuff and do these tours. But he was more of a UFO guy than like a ghost guy. He wasn't really into ghosts. He's like into UFOs and obviously weird stuff, but wasn't too convinced about ghosts. Then obviously he had these experiences, so I thought, I'm going to start staying overnight. And he stayed over 400 times. He stayed overnight. So he's heard obviously footsteps. He's seen chairs start rocking on their own, and he's heard like full blown conversations like upstairs, downstairs, even though he's
Wow.
alone in the house. So a bit more modern day, like you can see the house behind me. This is how it is now.
Yeah.
There's a small barn in the garden. It's look like gift shop and stuff. Because two people bought it and they were going to turn it into a bit of a museum. Then he ended up just because there's so much interest in people wanting to tour it and paranormal investigation crews wanted to come and stay the night. Obviously, they saw money. That's where the interest
Yeah.
was, and that's where the money was. So they turned it into this sort of hotel with day tours. There's a small barn in the garden, and there's like a cork board, and this has got a number of photographs on it that have been captured that apparently show alleged paranormal activity.
Awesome.
So there's orbs in these photos. There's like shadow people, and there's even one. It's someone's back where he'd got big scratch marks on his back that happened while he was inside the house on one of the day tours.
Amazing.
So yeah, so there's some evidence there on this little cork board outside the property. Like I say, there's loads of podcasts and articles. I was spoiled for choice.
Wow.
But a lot
Yeah.
just focus on the murders themselves.
Mhm.
Obviously, it's just the whole unsolved murder. There was like quite a few suspects and that, and obviously just the whole horrific 8 people killed, 6 of them were kids. It was obviously very horrific.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did like obviously grab headlines across the America at the time.
Yeah. I imagine it did. That's it's got a very similar vibe to Amityville, where they're all like murdered in the house as well. So yeah. Wow.
So yeah, that's Iowa.
Amazing. So yeah, thanks for joining us, Paranormal United States, episode 15, Iowa.